Alright, good morning. So we're going to go over the different moon phases. I know you read about them yesterday, so we're going to go into a little bit more detail with them. So the standard that we're using today is describe the changes in the observable shape of the moon over the course of about a month. Alright, so let's dive in. So some characteristics of the moon is approximately 384,400 kilometers, which is 239,000 miles from the Earth. It is Earth's natural satellite, and I'll explain what a satellite. Actually, a satellite is an object that moves around another larger object in space. So the moon goes around the Earth, so it's Earth's natural satellite. The moon is about 1/4 the diameter of Earth. So the diameter, think of Earth like this. The diameter is what goes all the way across Earth. So the diameter would be all the way across, how long it is basically. So the average temperature on the surface of the moon during the day is 170 degrees Celsius. There's no water, wind, or air on the moon. The gravity of the moon is about 1/6 the gravity on the Earth. That means that a person who weighs 180 pounds on Earth would only weigh 30 pounds if measured on the moon. Okay? And then the major feature we can see on the moon is its craters. These have apparently been caused by the impact from meteors over millions of years. Alright, so now let's dive into a little bit more of the moon phases themselves. So the Earth revolves around the sun, and at the same time the moon is revolving around the Earth. So as the Earth is moving around the sun, the moon is moving around the Earth. Okay, so the position of the moon as it orbits the Earth relative to the sun determines the phase of the moon. 50% of the moon is always lit by the sun. So as you see in the picture, the Earth revolves around the sun while the moon is revolving around the Earth. The position of the moon as it orbits the Earth is relative to the sun determines the phase of the moon. So the half of the moon is always lit by the sun unless the sun is eclipsed by the Earth, and I'll explain what eclipsed by the Earth means in a little bit. But the portion of the illuminated moon viewed from Earth depends on moon's orbit. So as the moon orbits, different portions of shadow and illumination are seen from Earth, creating moon phases. So as it orbits, we're able to see parts where the light up from the sun is shining onto that moon. So that's why we're able to see different phases. Alright, so some facts about phases of the Earth, or phases of the moon. As the moon circles the Earth, the shape of the moon appears to change. This is because different amounts of the illuminated part of the moon is facing us. So the shape varies from a new moon to a full moon. The moon grows or shrinks from right to left. And then, so light on right, so what that means is when the sun is shining on the moon and it starts to get lighter and grow, we call that waxing. When it starts to get dark, we call that waning. And then we always see the same face of the moon because it rotates and revolves at about the same speed. So we'll always see the same side of the moon because it's rotating about the same time it's revolving. So we'll only see one side. Okay, so the phases of the moon. Let's click this slide. So we start with new moon, then we go to waxing crescent moon, first quarter. So notice that the sun, you see the side that the sun's on. The rest is a shadow, that's why we're not able to see it. Then we're going to go to waxing gibbous, and then we're going to hit a full moon. So when we're building up, we go new moon, waxing crescent moon, first quarter, waxing gibbous. This just means that there's more light being shined onto the moon. And then we hit full moon. Once we hit full moon, we're going to start losing light. So we're going to do waning gibbous. The last quarter of the last quarter or third quarter, notice the light is on the other side. And then waning crescent. So now the shadow is starting to come over this side, and then it'll go back into a new moon. So when we look at the moon up in the sky, the moon looks different to us at various times during the month because of its location relative to the sun and its orbit around Earth. Earth's revolution around the sun and the moon's orbit around the sun, around the Earth results in moon phases. The moon, unlike the sun, gives off no light at all. So that moon gives no light off at all. In fact, the moon only reflects light from the sun. So sunlight hits the moon and the Earth differently during the months according to their locations. It takes 27.3 days for the moon to orbit the Earth. So for this whole cycle to go around, it takes about 27.3 days. Within this time period, the moon goes through all these phases. The lunar phase begins with the new moon, and it's followed by the waxing crescent moon, first quarter, waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter, and then waxing crescent, and then back to new moon, and then the cycle keeps going. So, and then under here it says it's about a week between each of the 4 main phases. So 4 main phases. Okay. Alright, so we're going to jump into new moon a little bit. It says the new moon is not visible because the lit side is facing away from Earth. After new moon, it starts to wax. So new moon basically means no moon. So new moon, no moon. The lunar cycle begins with the new moon. The new moon is visible to us because the lit side is invisible to us because the lit side of the moon is facing away from Earth. So what's being lit is only facing the sun, it's not facing us. So the side of the moon we see is not reflecting any sunlight, so therefore we can't see the moon in the sky. Because remember, the sunlight gives the moon its glow. The moon doesn't create that by itself. Okay, so after new moon, we have waxing crescent moon. Remember, waxing means it's getting light again. So the crescent moon occurs when a small piece of the moon is visible as the moon revolves around the sun. The crescent moon is between a quarter moon and a new moon. So it'll be new moon, waxing crescent, quarter moon. Less than half of the moon is lit up. It kind of looks like a little banana. Okay, so we call it waxing because it's starting to grow, it's starting to line up, and it's when the moon kind of looks like a little banana. It falls right after new moon and right before quarter moon. Alright, so the moon is a sphere which can be cut into 4 parts. Let me keep going on this. Alright, so half of the face or side of the moon we see is lit. That's the first quarter moon. Half of it is lit. So the moon continues to orbit, making a right angle with the sun. This moon phase is called the first quarter moon. 1/4 of an orbit has been completed, and only 1/4 of the moon's surface is visible from the Earth. So we started here at new moon. Think of our angles. We started, and it made 1/4. We've gone 1/4 of the way around. So the moon continues its orbit to make a right angle with the sun. This causes a first quarter moon. At this point, it looks like we can see half of the moon shining in the nighttime sky, but it looks like 1/2 of it is shown, but it's really only 1/4 of an orbit that has been completed, and only 1/4 of the moon's surface is visible. We see half of the side that's facing us. All right. So then the next side would be waxing gibbous moon. So waxing gibbous can be seen between the quarter moon and the full moon. Notice that there's more than half of it's filled, but it's still not one whole. It's growing still. Alright, so then we get to full moon. So a full moon occurs when half of the moon's total surface can be seen from Earth. So the phase is seen when the Earth is between the sun and the moon. So the Earth is between the sun and the moon. At this phase, the moon shines the brightest because it is a complete reflection of the sun rays. So it completely reflects the sun onto Earth, so it's the brightest we can see it. So again, a full moon occurs when half of the moon's surface can be seen from Earth, and this phase can be seen when the Earth is between the sun and the moon. After a full moon, the moon starts to wane, meaning it starts losing its light. So let's see what happens there. Okay, so the next phase we call a waning gibbous. A waning gibbous moon can be seen between the full moon and the quarter moon. So we have the full moon here, and we'll have the quarter moon here. So more than half of the moon is lit, But on the left, right here, the moon is dark. I'm sorry, on the left we can see, but on the right the moon is dark. So again, the lunar phase, it kind of begins to reverse. It goes backwards around the middle of the month. So waning gibbous moon can be seen between the full moon and the quarter moon. Now the moon is shrinking. You begin to see less and less, so it's going to shrink as we go through the next couple phases. Okay. So the next phase is going to be the last quarter or third quarter. So this would be the first quarter. The second quarter was the full moon. So we can call this third quarter or the last quarter. So the moon continues to orbit once again, making a right angle with the sun. This moon phase is called the last quarter moon. 3/4 of an orbit has been completed. 1/4 of the moon's entire surface we see is now visible from Earth. So we went 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So remember, we only see one side of the moon. Half of the side we see is lit, but the moon is a sphere. So for the half we see, 1/4 of the entire moon is reflecting light. So really 1/4 of it is the only reflecting light. Again, it's going to keep getting smaller. So we call this one waning crescent moon. So a crescent moon is visible midway between the quarter moon and a new moon. So midway between a quarter moon and a new moon. Less than half of it is lit, so again we have that banana shape for waning crescent moon. And then finally, we go back to new moon. And then one complete lunar cycle is complete. So it went all the way around, it waxed on, and then it waned. It started disappearing. Okay? So the cycle continues over and over and over. It takes, again, 27.3 days for one whole cycle to go through. So some takeaways I want you to get from this is moon phases, the 8 changes in the appearance of the moon, the amount of light visible on the face of the moon that we see. So remember, the moon doesn't create its own light, it's reflecting off of the sun. So there are 8 phases. The 4 main phases are new moon. So we have new moon, the first quarter moon where we see half of it, the full moon where we see all of it, and then again where we see only half of it. Those are the 4 main phases. It takes 27.3 days for the moon to complete one revolution around the Earth, and it continues to go around. So every 27.3 days, this cycle down here goes over and over and over. So the lunar cycle, the definition of lunar cycle is the time it takes for the moon to revolve around the Earth, going from a new moon back to a new moon. And then down here it gives us some key phrases to remember to help us remember these moon phases. So new moon is no moon. We can't see the moon. There's no light reflecting off of it that we can see. Waxing after new, so it builds up. Waxing is like growing. The light is getting bigger. And then waning is after full moon. It's getting smaller. Light to the right is waxing. So anytime you see light on the right side of the moon, it's waxing. And anytime you see light to the left side, it's waning. So the moon grows and shrinks from right to left. So down here, let's see if I can just get this figure. So we start with new moon, new crescent, first quarter, waxing gibbous. So new crescent can also be called waxing as well. Waxing gibbous, full moon, waning gibbous, last quarter old crescent. So it starts to get bigger on the right. We're getting bigger, and then it's slowly getting smaller because the light is now staying on the left, and the darkness, the shadow, is coming over. Alright, so I want you to use this PowerPoint and this voiceover to go and answer the questions that I've posted in the Science tab. If you need to watch this video over again to answer some of the questions, that's fine. If you have any questions, please let me know.